Are you a little overwhelmed, feeling isolated, angry, frustrated, unacknowledged, or fearful? Do you find yourself wanting to retreat from the world? Then it's time to break down the barriers and say yes to yourself. Join me, Christine Clark, on Forging a Life to spark the ignition and put your life into drive. We'll cover how to ignite full circle success on your terms. You can forge through. Every episode, I share a life forging tip to spark your liberated, energized, and profoundly satisfying life. It has never been a question of, do you have what it takes? It is only, are you willing to try? Forging a Life is about you and our world, as each of us forge our unique destiny. We light the way for others, igniting world-healing transformation. Step into the work and make an effort. Trust yourself and the process of becoming. Forging a Life starts now. When do you know, like really know, this is your thing? What tips the scale when you to step onto the entrepreneurial path? When is the iron hot and ready to strike? And when do you know, like you really know, that preserving your heritage is a priority? My guest today is the vibrant, articulate Terrence Jones, whose entrepreneurial calling is wrapped in a passion to preserve his Creole heritage and honor the matriarchs who pass that heritage down. You know, food is the most enduring tool matriarchs use to protect the identity and culture of a people. Terrence Jones is the founder and CEO of Louisiana Creole Pecan Candy, bringing Creole culture to the world one heavenly bite at a time. This is Forging a Life, igniting full circle success. I am your host, Christine Clark. My guest today is Terrence Jones. Terrence, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I am delighted, looking forward to this for so long. I just want to let people, get to know you. So just tell us a little bit about you, maybe a little bit of your childhood too, because I know that this thing you're doing now started way back, really, if you look for the seeds of what you're doing now. So just kind of give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Lafayette, Louisiana, which is, I think it's the third or fourth largest city in the state of Louisiana, about 2 hours northwest of New Orleans. But that's only because we don't have a bridge or a road that goes straight down to the Gulf of Mexico. So you got to go out the way. But during my upbringing, my dad's side of the family is from Louisiana area, and they always was speaking Creole. So one of the words that I know or phrases is "Comment ça va?" Oui bien. So essentially, how are you doing? And you say, I'm doing fine, and so on and so forth. And most of the adults on my dad's side of the family, they only spoke Creole when the kids were around. So we didn't understand what they were talking.
Keeping secrets.
Right. And so as we have gotten older, as kids, we end up start figuring out what they were saying. And so we can interpret it. It didn't help that two of my relatives, my older cousin and my older brother, they were in French immersion program in Louisiana, because if people don't know, Louisiana used to be a French colony. And at one point in time, Louisiana was a Spanish colony before the United States was even established. Louisiana already was established in key parts, especially New Orleans. New Orleans is older than the country. Most people don't know that. Mm. And so that was my first introduction into Creole heritage. And one thing that I know as a kid, one of the reasons why our family didn't really talk much about it as children for us was because of the relationship that Creoles have had with the Roman Catholics. So we were brought up Roman Catholic, and all of my dad's family went to Catholic school. And so the nuns would beat them if they heard them speaking Creole or French, because they wanted them to assimilate into the American society, which is a thread, a common theme that goes across not only of Creole people of color, but also people who come from different backgrounds, whether you're Indian, whether you are Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and so on and so forth. we all have had some form of assimilation history here in the United States where
Right.
people wanted to shut down the fact that we were different from what the majority was. And then from there, went to grad school, University of Louisiana Lafayette for undergrad and grad school. And my alma mater is known as the Raging Cajuns. And most people don't know that Cajun is a derivative of the Creole culture. And how Cajun was created was all of these Cajuns who they came down from Arcadia, from Canada. They were exiled. They found a colony here in South Louisiana. And a lot of them considered themselves Creole. When the Reconstruction and Civil War happened, the rich elites told those poor Cajuns or Creoles, hey, you need to separate yourself from the freed people of color Creoles. And so Cajun, which was a derogatory word, similar to the N word that, people, they referred to Black people as during the Civil Rights era and before, they took the word Cajun and made it something of value. And so they created this subculture to separate themselves from the free Creoles of color. And then the state of Louisiana took that identity, I want to say in the 60s or so, and used it as the heritage for the state of Louisiana, which ended up leading into a lot of foods that were invented by Creoles with the essence of, when you focus on slavery, the seasoning, the herbs, the spices, and a lot of the different plants that are now a part of the Louisiana economy and even the U.S. economy were kept in the not socks, but in the traditional wear that the African slaves kept with them. So they planted it here in the States. That is a big influence in the Creole culture. And so essentially the Cajuns hijacked that and made it their own, which pecan candy and pralines is one of that. That's a part of that too, which was invented by Black women who were indentured servants in the French. All of that circled back to my grandmother teaching me and the family how to make pecan candy, aka pralines. And, COVID happened. And I thought to myself, what am I good at making? And that was the thing that sparked the start of what we have, Louisiana Creole Pecan Candy.
Beautiful. That is beautiful. And so Cajun is Creole.
Yes.
And it came from that. And 2020 was a huge year. I cannot tell you how many people I've talked to where 2020 was their starting point. 2020 was the time when they decided to step in to do something. That is awesome. You had a conversation with your grandmother, like a month before she died. Tell us about that. And was that part of this catalyst to want to, make sure that the heritage in the food gets carried forward?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I was toying with the idea like, hey, I need to talk to my grandma about her life story, about being brought up in segregated South, being brought up as a fair-skinned Creole woman in Louisiana and understanding the complexity of our family and how why I'm here today, essentially in a nutshell. And so, shortly before she passed, something said, Terrence, you need to go talk to your grandmother. Like, today is the only day you can talk to her. You won't have all the other family members around, so she can freely share to you her life story. So I went, and it was always a part of our company's mission and aims is to not only craft, delicacies that are familiar to Creole ancestry, but also to curate content that protects and to preserve Creole identity, not only in the state of Louisiana, but around the world. As most people don't realize, Creole heritage is represented in 40 different nations. Right. So to the people who may be listening or people who understand or know of Cajun culture, ask yourself, Cajun is only represented in the United States and it's only represented in Louisiana, but Creole, 40 different nations. Then start doing your research and you're going to start seeing stuff. And so when I spoke to my grandmother, I got her whole life story. I got from birth, from their house burning down, losing all those critical records, such as their birth certificates and so on and so forth. Even a point in time, she was like, I might not even be 90 years old. I might be older. I might be younger, but we're just going based off of what,
Oh,
our
wow.
family has
Right.
told us from what they remember.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me the story about being younger. And for most people who don't know this, slavery really did not end after the Civil War.
Right.
Slavery just took a different form, which changed into like sharecropping. So she told me about in the early 1900s about being a sharecropper with her family, where they would have the kids get up early in the morning and they would go pick cotton. And they hated picking cotton because also too it was still hot. And so she said um, that is how her love for cooking came about, because if she could get out of the field and she could be in the house and she cook, she didn't have to be in the field. So she would cook all the dishes, and then she would have one of her other siblings will wash the dishes because she hated cleaning up. So they would take care of that. And then she started telling me like how she learned about these different recipes and how she perfected it. And then eventually that led her to, when she got older, married my grandfather, Sidney. And then she also started working for some notable rich families in Lafayette. And then ended up creating or being friends with some of the wives of the families that she would become the nanny. So very similar story to the movie The Help. She was
Right.
the help, raising those kids, being the nanny, and then also being the confidant of the wife. So imagine that. And then learning about our history through that, learning about how the nuns would beat my family or other people who would speak French and Creole, which is widely problematic.
Right.
Um, um, and, and and then also we talked about the piece of why didn't you know grandma, grandpa, and the aunts and uncles, including my dad also too, why didn't you all try to bring us into the culture more when we were younger, to teach us more about our heritage? And for some of us, we had to learn on the back end, myself included. I knew a little bit, but 2020 really piqued my interest because I feel that as a Creole man, I don't fully understand who I am
Right.
and why I look this way. I know why I look the way I look, but like, what else am I mixed with? Because I get that question every day. You don't look all the way black. Is your mom Asian? Is your dad Asian? Like, what is it? I don't know.
Right.
I can say is that I'm Creole. And so her story and preserving that and recording that, I wanted to hold on to that, and
Mm-hmm.
share with my family and then eventually to the world, so they can understand that even though we have different sections of Creole, that a lot of our stories are very common, and it's a common thread that ties back to the humanity that's in all of us.
Right. That is so rich and lovely for you to take the time. And I love the voice spoken. You answered, you went and spent that time with your grandmother, and to be able to bring it back and bring it forward. Yes, we have this history, and yes, um, assimilation was punished, was brought in, and it's like it's time to get real. It's time to reclaim and show the full spectrum of what we are, who we are. And I love that you're doing that, and you were able to do that with your grandmother and get that full history, full story. um, that's amazing. That is
Thank
very
you.
cool. um, the Creole women who were enslaved or indentured
Mhm.
were the ones with the spices, who created um, the Cajun food, but the Creole food and the pralines. which in the French version is done with almonds.
Yep.
Here, it's done with pecans, and which are plentiful in the South. But what they created was kind of hijacked by the white owners, and they then sold, and then they made up these mammy characters, and labeled it and branded it, which I want to skip the first break and just tell us a little bit about that, because it's like who they were hijacked for the profit of somebody else.
Correct. So I'll kind of give you like a story around that, which is funny. So a couple of weeks ago, I went to Medellin, Colombia. And so I don't know if you remember, our listeners remember this, during 2020, due to the social reckoning, there were a lot of things that came down. One of the most prominent mammy figures that we all remember, Aunt Jemima, right?
Right.
So here in the United States, that company went through a rebranding to remove Aunt Jemima because of the caricature of the mammy. Tell me why, when I was in Medellin a couple of weeks ago, Aunt Jemima was just removed in the United States. It's not removed around the world. So that caricature of the mammy type person still permeates in societies outside the United States. We were just more vocal about it. And if you're in another country, they don't know the history behind it unless they Google it. Right. And so essentially, when we go all the way back to 1800s or maybe 1700s, when pralines were first invented, the European version, they used almonds. And if anybody who has had pralines from Europe, they're small bite-sized squares that look like the regular chocolates we can get at Walmart for Valentine's Day. That is the size of a normal praline. It's chocolate-covered nuts, so on and so forth. Well, when these women who were indentured slaves to the French taught them how to make their version of pralines. And so these women had the idea. They noticed that Louisiana had an abundance of pecan trees. So they said, ooh, let's go get some pecans. We learned how to make their version of praline, but what if we caramelize the sugar? We put everything into copper pots. We stir. And instead of making it a square, we turn it into a patty, almost the size of a cookie. And so they called it pecan candy. Then the white owners, they were like, oh, we like that. And they knew that it was a derivative, essentially, of what they learned from the French as far as how to make their version of pralines. So they said, you know what? We're going to revert this back and call it pralines. And we're going to create this mascot of a black woman, heavyset black woman with red lips, with a bandana, looking like the slaves. And we're going to use this to sell products all around Bourbon Street, the French Quarter, and so on and so forth. And then that recipe, started spreading throughout the South, which you have one of our largest competitors is in New Orleans. We have another large competitor in Texas and Georgia, and so on and so forth. And I beg the question, because if you go on any of their websites and you look at their history, they don't talk about the history. They talk about it was a family recipe. Let's call it what it is. It was a family recipe because you own the people who invented it, who created it.
Was it? Yeah.
Let's call it out. Because one thing about Louisiana Creole Pecan Candy, we are very strong at this point to call out how we got to where we're at. It was our ancestors who came through the Port of New Orleans or the Port of Orleans who invented this treat. Same thing with barbecue sauce. Most people don't know. Barbecue sauce was invented in the 1700s by Creoles in the West Indies. All this time we think about South Carolina, we think about, Kansas, barbecue sauce and so on and so forth. Now you start seeing the picture of how we created our product lines. Everything ties back to Creole. And I'm forever, indebted to my ancestors The Jones family, who started out as slaves, they moved to the Lafayette area, and then that recipe was passed down to my grandmother, who was like the best cook in the family. And then inadvertently, it got passed down to me, and we modified it to make it a whole lot better.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. That is awesome. And I love, you know, putting the heritage, putting the history right out there so that it is visible, is great. And it sets you apart. Um, I remember when we met back in April
Mm-hmm.
in Des Moines at the Black and Brown Athene Business Summit, that you had just added the barbecue sauce to the product line.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a little disconnect. It's like, wait a minute, you're making candy, now you're making sauce. But it's the heritage, it is the ethnicity of the Creole product. That's what it is. So your diversity, you'll diversify along those lines, but it's all about continuing the heritage. And then it's like, oh, that makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
These aren't desperately separate types of products. They all stem from the same authentic root, which is just cool, very cool. I think that was
Yes, yes,
awesome.
yes.
Yeah. We met at the Black and Brown Business Summit in West Des Moines, and you were on a panel of people who had been awarded prize money for previous summit pitch contests. And so tell me a little bit about getting seed money through pitching. I mean, that looks, from my point of view, just attending, enjoying the people. It's like, I'm just in awe of the people that get up to do something like that. For me, speaking in front of people is no big deal. But if I was to pitch, that just seems tantamountly scary because you're like, I'm doing this so that you can get me, give me some cash so I can move my business forward. And it's like, oh, that's such a hard ask. But tell me about that. Tell me about pitching for seed money.
It's interesting. People always, well, let me rephrase it. Huh, I think for anyone, it is very hard to put yourself out there in anything that you do, but especially jumping out on faith and creating a business, right?
Absolutely.
We all of us, whether it's here in the United States, around the world, most of us will never, or most of us won't go ahead and create our own business. We rather work for someone. And I remember in 2020, I was working at another company, and one of my colleagues said, don't be a hidden figure, because at the end of the day, you are working at the request of someone else's dream. So you're
Right.
working to fulfill someone else's dream.
Mm-hmm.
So you should be able to figure out what your dream is and what you want to do and work towards that. If you're working a day job, you can use that as a vehicle to your business and so on and so forth. And so, years later at this point, so that's 2020, let's fast forward to 23. And I was at an impasse with the business. The business was growing, but from a financial standpoint, some people will look at it and say, does it make sense to keep on going? Well,
Right. That break point between input and getting the revenue ramped up enough to, first thing you want to do is break even.
exactly.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
That's a
you're
tough
you're
hurdle.
you're thinking through all of that, and then you realize that a lot of businesses, like businesses that have been very successful, most of those businesses have had seed money. I didn't have any seed money. I didn't
Yeah.
have anyone investing in me outside of my own pocketbook, and then a couple of family members who believed in this experiment that I was doing, because it started out as an experiment just to prove a
Right.
point. Can I create a business that is profitable, that I can then show this as the poster child so I can become a business consultant? That is kind of one of the ways the whole business started. And so it took its own mind of its own. So 23, I said, hey, we need to get investments. We need to get more money other than just doing these pop-up shows and vendor events and so on and so forth, because now I'm just focused on Louisiana. So one day I got an email saying all these different grants and pitch competitions. And some said, hey, just go ahead and apply. And it was the Black and Brown Bank of America pitch competition. So I
Okay.
applied. I think it was February of 23. I applied, didn't think nothing of it. I remember
Yeah,
going to,
Iowa in February is a little colder than
right.
Louisiana.
So I applied virtually, did everything that I had to do. I remember going to sleep on March 30th. 30th, does March have 31 days? I think March does have 31 days. So I went to sleep on the 31st and I had a premonition and an affirmation for me. I'm going to run into a large sum of money to help drive this business and to keep it going and to expand. I woke up April 1 feeling energized, so on and so forth. And it's April Fool's Day. Keep that in mind. At 11 o'clock, I checked my emails a Saturday and it said, congratulations, you are a finalist for the Bank of America pitch competition in Des Moines, Iowa. You have 2 weeks to get here for the competition, but you also have to
Wow.
submit a pitch deck. You have to do this and you have to do that. And at first, it was like, oh, this got to be an April Fool's joke. But no, it was real. So went ahead, booked my ticket, started, assembling a group of people that I trust that can help me craft my pitch deck. Mind you, prior to me applying, something told me, my intuition said, you need to start building out a pitch deck before I even applied to anything. So I already had a
Wow.
pitch deck ready to go to a certain extent that just needed to be refined. So I wasn't working backwards at this point. And so I got a group of frat brothers and friends and even colleagues at my day job to listen to me pitch, to look at my pitch deck, give me pointers and feedback and so on and so forth. And to those who don't know, by trade, I have been in sales. And then my next career outside of sales ended up becoming a corporate trainer. So, putting that all to use and then getting up on stage, nerve wracking. I remember the first round of people, most of the men went at the beginning of the pitch competition was a total of 8 pitchers. And so I remember the one of the guys had just got off stage and he was like, I didn't do too well, but I need you to bring it home for the guys. And so I went up there nervous. I had my headphones in, listening to Beyonce. At that time, I was listening to the song Cuff It because I can remember that day. I had my headphones on, got on stage. I had a intro video play first. Had the intro video play, hyped up the crowd, and then got on stage. After the first 30 seconds, all those fears went away. And I was just so excited to be done, to be done. But at the same token, that day started off so rocky for me. I had a moment where I thought to myself, it's raining. I got into my hotel late. There was a tornado that happened prior to me arriving to Iowa. And that morning it was raining cats and dogs. And I thought to myself, maybe this is a sign. Let me pack up my stuff and go back to the airport. I can't do this. I'm glad I went through it. I know that my mom's mom, my grandmother, Catherine Burns, who is our parent company name, I felt her presence there because the moment I got off stage, the clouds opened up, the sun came out, and I was just bawling after I ran off that stage. A couple of people were like, congratulations, you did great. And I was just like, I left it all on that stage. And
Oh
that's all I
man.
wanted. And that's how I look at pitch competitions. We give it your all. Make it a performance. It is performative at the end of the day.
Right.
But
Yeah.
now, after doing a couple of pitch competitions, I still get nervous. But I encourage people, put yourself out there because you never know. What was the quote or the saying that something about opportunities with the misses, like it's the shots that you don't take. So you never know. You
Right.
put
Yeah.
yourself out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I love again that you've got the premonition that the universe, eternal God, however you word that, speaking to you, you followed through in the premonition. Ah, that is awesome. That is so cool. We're gonna go ahead and move to a break. We're gonna take a little break here. I'm your host, Christine Clark. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. Claim your free clarity session. The link is in the show notes and at foragingalife.com. My guest today is Terrence Jones, CEO of Louisiana Creole Pecan Candy. You can find him at Louisiana Creole Candy on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. Stick around to witness an experience of Cajunish and Creolish because we have them when we come back. And of course, your life foraging tip will be there as well. And we'll take a little break. Hello, and welcome back to Foraging a Life. Igniting Full Circle Success. I am your host, Christine Clark, and I have Terrence Jones, CEO of the Louisiana Creole Pecan Candy Company, here with me. And before the show, last week or so, I ordered some of your candy. So I have the Cajunish and the Creolish. So Terrence, tell us a little bit about the Creolish. About this candy. I know you've perfected it. It came from your grandmother. It was handed down by all the matriarchs for years, given to your father and then to you. So Tell me about this, and then I'm going to take a bite.
Yes. So we have two different registered trademark brands. We have Creolish, which pays homage to my heritage as a Creole person representing 40 different nations. And then Cajunish, which pays homage to my alma mater, the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. And so what you have in front of you is the Creolish original pecan candy, aka praline. So with all of our pecan candies and pralines, they double as a coffee creamer sweetener. So if you like hot coffee, like I like hot coffee, drop that sucker into some hot coffee. It will melt and dissolve and act as a coffee creamer too. Just swirl it around. Ooh. All that's going to be left is the nut. That's it. So a little tidbit there. But essentially, we took grandma's recipe, how she used it. I know for my grandmother at one point in time, she was using Carol syrup and some other stuff. We took all of that out. So we stopped using Carol syrup. We don't use salt. We don't use imitation vanilla. And most people don't know, imitation vanilla is a byproduct of the paper manufacturing industry. So you're utilizing that in baking and so on and so forth. So we opted to use pure vanilla. So everything that we use is pure ingredients. And then
I love the ingredients list. Contains nuts, sugar, dairy, and vanilla.
Yeah, simple. Yeah. It's very, very simple. And so a lot of our competitors, they use all the, more, how can I say, things that might not be as healthy, or put it that way, in their products and how they make it. And I understand it's cost effective, but at the same token, I like to call us a luxury pecan candy praline company in the U.S. Because that's what we're giving. From the packaging, from the portion size, most of our competitors from a national landscape, their candies or pralines are significantly smaller than ours. They're about half the size or smaller.
This is a good size.
Exactly.
Yeah. You said like a cookie size, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So we try to stay true to our heritage. And then on the flip side, with the Creolish brand, we have other flavors like our Rum Tell That, which pays homage to our New Orleans Saints out there. So the black and gold, and that is with rum, made with rum. We also have our Zydeco milk chocolate, which pays homage to one of the top versions of music that has been crafted in Louisiana, which is Zydeco. And Zydeco has a bluegrass feel and a country feel. It's like a fusion of a couple of different genres of music. And for those who have listened to Beyonce mentions it in her newest album, Cowboy Carter. As most people don't know, Beyonce is one of the most famous Creoles on the face of this planet. And she has also donated and given us money. We won a grant, $10,000 grant from Beyonce's nonprofit.
Yeah, right.
And then on the flip side, we have Cajunish, which has our Cajun white chocolate praline, which is unique. Most people have never had a praline or pecan candy that is made with white chocolate, and that is the popular praline in my city, in my hometown, Lafayette. And it's one of my favorites. I would say that's my favorite is the Cajun. It's also too. It's just a blend that you didn't think you needed, but you needed it, right? And it's addicting, from what a lot of people say.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna try the Creolish.
Yes. And while you're eating, let me know what you think. And then with Cajunish, we also have our gluten, dairy, and soy-free praline, which is named after our state flower, Magnolia, which is a coconut base, and it uses organic raw sugar versus regular white sugar, what we use for the other candies.
Oh, that is lovely. There's a little bit of tang that comes from the pecan. That's a nice little side set, but I think if I drop that in my coffee, that's going to be a really decadent coffee in the morning. I won't need toast or anything. just that, right?
Yes.
Oh, beautiful. And then the Cajunish is the white chocolate.
Which is the crowd favorite. It is even smoother than the original, and it has a nice subtle texture with it. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people like it. And then it's unique. People, especially in Louisiana, they have never thought about having a white chocolate. We see chocolate, milk chocolate, or dark chocolate pralines or candies, but not a white chocolate one.
I don't know. It's close. They are both amazing. They are both wonderful. Oh,
thank you.
Oh, thank you for that, Terrence. This is great. Yeah. And so I'm eating this, I'm experiencing this. And this is because of the matriarchs who used their own ingredients from the roots, created this, and this is your heritage. This is Creole. This is Cajun.
Yes.
When bringing this forward and sharing this with the world, what is your desire for the people that purchase and consume your products?
What is, let's see, my hope is that people take away that there are better options than some of our competitors. But in addition to that, is that people will want to do their research around our heritage and understand the nuances of what it means to be Creole. And not only just look at it from a Louisiana standpoint, because I know a lot of people, when they think of Louisiana, we think about food, right? And Mardi Gras, New Orleans.
Right.
But outside of that, knowing that Louisiana Creole is just a small subset section of the overarching history and heritage that makes up what Creole people are around the world. That is my hope. And my hope also, too, is that people, feel empowered by it. Not, a lot of people will always make this comment, especially when we sell our tumblers and our t-shirts. Well, I'm not Creole or I'm not Cajun, so I don't know if I should wear it or buy it. If you appreciate our heritage and our culture, it's for you. If you don't appreciate our heritage and our culture and what we're doing, don't buy it. It's not for you. And so knowing that we have billions of people that is a part of this heritage, and we try to make sure that we reflect the different sections of our heritage, we're casting a wide net. And you never know. You may do ancestry.com and you may realize that you have traces of Creole. It might not be Louisiana Creole, but it could be Portuguese. It could be, Indian, African sects of Creole, or even in the Caribbean. Because one thing that I want people to understand, Creole is not a race. In America, they weaponized the term Creole to describe people who were mixed in Louisiana, right? Versus you look outside of Louisiana and look at the worldview, you have white Creoles, you have Chinese, Japanese Creoles, and so on and so forth. And for me, it's about bringing all of us together because I think we're better together than separate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that was one of my biggest learnings, meeting you, preparing for the show, is to discover more what Creole really is and then how widespread it is. And I was kind of mystified that all the countries there are Creole people. And then we have Creole, but only in this one spot in America. It's like, that's kind of interesting, that it wasn't a little wider spread. But absolutely. And I love you're very definitive. If it's the culture means something to you, if the history means something to you, if you're interested and you just want to support it, this is for you. And if not, it's not for you. Now, that clarity is priceless, from the standpoint of standing strong in who you are, to also as a brand, as an entrepreneur, defining who your people are and who you're serving, and making no qualms about the people that fall outside of that. That is so incredibly huge and strong, and I admire that so much. That is
Thank you.
That is awesome. We are going to go ahead and take a little break. My guest today is Terrence Jones. He is the founder of CEO of Louisiana Creole Pecan Candy. You can follow him on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Louisiana Creole Candy. This is Forging Your Life. I am your host, Christine Clark, business life coach. Find me at forgingyourlife.com. Follow Coach Christine Clark on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We're going to take a little break, and your life forging tip is yet to come. Hello and welcome back to Forging Your Life, Igniting Full Circle Success. I am your host, Christine Clark, and my guest today is Terrence Jones, CEO of Louisiana Creole Pecan Candy. We're going to dive into what's going on right now with the company and future vision. And I just want to make sure that we get your life forging tip in, because I know you are waiting for that, and we're going to just make sure we cover that right now. So we'll get that done and then be able to talk a little bit more with Terrence. Entrepreneurial excellence is anchored in self-belief, trusting who you are to bring your unique gift to the world. Here's your life forging tip. When you choose to share your passion, your talent, your invention, your creation with the world, just know that it's going to be challenging. It's going to take work. The meaning you personally experience bringing forth your thing is what will see you through. Hone in on your true why by asking yourself, why is this important to me? Answer, then ask again and answer again. Keep asking, why is this important to me? Allow for whatever surfaces. Follow the question down into your soul. And when your answer chokes you up, brings tears to your eyes, makes your body quiver, you will have found your true why. That's your anchor that will see your enterprise through to create success on your terms. This exercise is best done with a partner. Coach Christine Clark is your ultimate success partner. Book your clarity session now and claim your true why. Terrence, tell us, currently, what's your biggest challenge with your business? I know that you're a parallelpreneur. So everybody, Terrence is bringing this amazing company forward while working full time for someone else. So this is like one of the most challenging ways to become an entrepreneur. You're doing both. You're working at least 2 jobs, and really it's probably feels more like 3. So tell us just, currently what's going on and with the business, and what's the biggest challenge at the moment?
Yeah. So Currently, we are getting ready for the Louisiana Restaurant Showcase 2024 in New Orleans, Louisiana, at the Convention Center on the on the Mississippi River, and so that's what we're preparing for. As this will be our last year attending this particular trade show or food expo. We'll be doing some other ones around the nation next year, but things that I would say challenge me with the business. Yes, parallel entrepreneur, working a full time job, still running the business. But one part is knowing when to let go. And what I mean by that is bringing in more people, new people, fresh ideas into the business and having them run different things like our social media and marketing strategies. Get me out of it. I'm just saying, hey, I like this. I don't like this. Let's giving somebody else the creative freedom. I'm a really chill person. If you met any of my employees or contractors, they will say Terrence is really chill. On the flip side, from a fundamental foundation of where we're trying to go, how I like to say our North Star to a certain extent, we know that every small business or business who wants to expand, funding, continually getting more funding, which that funding, we utilize that to scale the business. Because for where we're at, we're getting more funding, which is a plus side. We're getting, notoriety not only in the US, but around the world. But now it's how do we connect from getting all this funding and essentially weaponizing it to be able to scale and take on a lot of our competitors in a way that is unique because none of them are focused on the heritage. We're focused on heritage. And we have a vehicle to utilize our heritage to get into other markets that they couldn't get into because they're not a part of the culture.
Right. Huge. How do you, letting go is beautiful. That helps the company thrive. Like you said, gives other people opportunity to be creative, have a real part. How do you find those people that are your match, your mate, you're in line with your vision, with your values, and that so that you can do that, so you can let go?
Oh, that's a tough one because, some people go solely based off of intuition and some people will say they know what it is when they know, right? Almost like when you find your significant other, it's like, when to a certain extent. And then on the flip side, you go through like the business interview type questions. So I would say like my graphic designer who has been instrumental in updating our marketing collateral. So we haven't updated the website to show the website was one rebrand. So that was one contractor.
Right. That's just recently finished, right?
Yeah, recently finished. We have a brand new website, switch systems and how we operate. But we haven't brought over the new graphic elements of our new logo and the story behind why the logo has changed and morphed over the course of the past 4 years. So we added that to our social media. But for that particular contractor or freelancer, I was getting to the point where I was decision paralyzed. I knew that I have a deliverable that I have to meet, part of our phase 1 approach for rebranding. And this was closing out that rebranding. And I said, we need a new logo. All right, how do we get there? So I posted the job and, I'm the type of person where I just wait to a certain extent. Let's see how many people apply. And then eventually I start going through it and I'm looking. And I gave every contractor a task that I need them to look at. I need you all to review, what we're doing and what you come up with. Let's see what you come up with because I have my own theme. But hey, and I uploaded that. And this particular contractor reached out to me on social media with a proof already done. And I was like, you're hired. Like you took it a step further and you read the assignment and you figured out, instead of me typing up how I would do it, let me just create it and give you a visual because I didn't know how my idea would look. And so he went ahead, did it. I went into the tool, automatically hired him right on the spot. And at the end, he told me, he said, out of all the businesses and companies I've worked for, you have paid me the most. And I even gave him a bonus on top of that for finishing that side of it. So now I'm going to use him in the future. And then
Right.
on top of that, knowing that we were getting ready for my grandmother's birthday, which was July 11th, who the company is based around, this is our first birthday without her. And he created a like a photo collage of her with the family and everybody pieced together that makes the image of her with the logo in the center as a gift. So he did two projects. He made a version of the collage for, just for video purposes, and then a keepsake for the company of an image of her with all of her pictures wrapped up in it. And that, means more for me. And I know that in the future, I can continually use him for any project that I have because the turnaround speed was quick and he understood what we were trying to accomplish because he can think back to his own upbringing and see that there's a commonality between us both.
Right. Yeah. Sounds like your people. Sounds like someone that's invested with the family, with the heritage, with you. Love it
Mhm.
when you can find those people and it works for them. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Thank you
yes.
so much for being here with me, Terrence. This has been fantastic.
Thank
My,
you.
my guest today is Terrence Jones. He is the founder and CEO of the Louisiana Creole Pecan Candy, bringing Creole culture to the world in an edible transmission of culture. You can follow Terrence on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Louisiana Creole Candy. I'm your host, Christine Clark. If you're ready to take your passionate interest and ignite a thriving business, you want to break free and flow forward, or just want to access your inner wisdom, one session with me, Coach Christine Clark, will instill confidence, clear the air, and ignite positive action. Find me at forginglife.com. Follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. Book your free session and begin. Until next time, keep forging through.